This is my Dark Souls Pinwheel cosplay I made myself from scratch. Hey, what's up? It's Alexi Cosplay. For this video, I'm going to show you how I made Pinwheel, and I thought that a good way to do that is to go through my binder of how it was made. So, on the cover, we got 4 images of Pinwheel. I say, this is Pinwheel. It's from Dark Souls, which is a FromSoft game. And then we have the references on screen. You can see there's a description of like what I was new at learning, and then what I built on, and then stuff that I was already fairly familiar with, and then anything I had pre-bought. Alright, page 1. This is the mask page. I started with the white Party City masks, and then I reinforced that with paper mache, and then I added EVA foam. I'll break that down a little bit. I have some images up. So what that means is I bought the Party City mask, and then it was kind of flimsy. I got it because it was my face shape, and it already came with a strap. So it's something I knew that would like fit my face. So I got contractor's paper and wood glue. It's gonna be the Titebond 3, I think it is, the green one. So I ripped that up, paper mache that onto the mask. I think I did about 2 layers. Could be good with 1. And then for more base shapes, into like the whole mask, as you can see, a lot of them have like raised parts up here. That was EVA foam. It was a lot easier to glue it right to the paper mache. I would get contact cement and I would put it on the paper mache mask, add the EVA foam as like a base. So yeah, on top of all of that, I would stick foam clay. Alright, so I have the mask right here. If I put them on, I can see these are like, in these holes I have like sunglasses, and then I added like a black like wash to get into the crevices. This was all foam clay, pretty much. Let's add it on top. I'm gonna flip it. There's EVA foam like right here. This is way too flat to be sculpted by foam clay. And on the back up here, EVA foam that I cut with a somewhat dull knife, so it still has these like edges. And you can even see on the inside the Party City mask. There's paper mache. This is paper mache right here. I painted it black. So one thing with the foam clay is to get these like finer details, especially with the eyes, I would have to lay down like a layer of foam clay, and then to get like any raised details or like stuff on top, like this eyebrow, I would wait for up to weeks at a time just to make sure that there was a layer that was like bone dry before I added more on top of it. It's pretty nice because instead of like, I hated working with like regular like sculpting clay, like the professional stuff, because it's all very malleable and it never hardens. But the problem is like it's easier to like, I don't know, if I were to add pieces to that type of clay, it'd be easy to like mush and like distort what you've already done. So I like to think of it as like the foam clay drying is like saving your work. So like I'll put down layers, I'll let it dry for weeks, and that's a layer that's saved, and then I can add more on top of it with more like finer details later. So how I would get the proportions right and all of the details correct is I would lay this flat, and then I would take a photo straight down. I would line the 2 images up, and the front one would have a lower opacity so you can see through it, and they would be lined up, and I could see which areas were too big, which were too small. So if I were to hold this right here and lay the image over it, you could see like, oh, like maybe his beard is too long, or maybe this eye is too big, since they're like right on top of each other, like a reference image. And then I'd go back and adjust, and then I'd do the same process over a couple times until I get it pretty correct. Oh, I see I jumped ahead. This was on page 2. I have images of that process. So we just knocked out page 1 and 2. Page 3, we have the paper mache body. So this part might have taken the longest, like duration wise, just because I had to wait for glue to dry so much. Okay, so I pretty much started by making a breastplate out of foam and saran wrap, like how you just like put it on your body and then duct tape it and then cut it up, and then you can make like foam patterns out of it. And then on top of the saran wrap, I paper mached it. So basically I had like a breastplate out of paper mache, and then I flipped it over. So basically I put my arms in the armholes, and what would usually go down goes up. So basically you could think of it as like I had like a big collar like sticking up. It would go up to about here above me. And then on top of that, I added a triangle piece. I did the same thing where I had like foam and saran wrap, and then I added paper mache. Next, I wanted to get the armholes. I basically just made like a tower with the same method of EVA foam, saran wrap, and then finish it off with paper mache. The good thing about this was I only had to make one EVA tower. I could just keep covering it in paper mache and then cutting it up and then reusing the same tower with more paper mache. I made 4 of those, kind of like spread out as arms, and this is how we got the volume. We're at page 4. I added I added some EVA foam as a like spine in the back. Between that spine and the arms, I had a good like structure where I was able to get some yarn and pretty much just sew it between that paper mache and that spine. And I created like a wire frame to which I could paper mache more on top of it. So it's basically the whole thing is big and hollow, but still quite durable. I think I did about like at least 3 layers over a lot of parts with this, just to make sure it could handle bumps, and it's been pretty good. In the front, you can see there's some EVA foam. I have that there so that I can attach the masts easily. They're attached together with zip ties so I can undo them. Page 6. Additional support. So at this point, I could lift the whole thing up with just my pinky. I didn't have like a good spot for it to rest like on my shoulders or anywhere, and if I were to rest on my head, it would sink too low. Also, the armholes were just not working. So what I ended up having to do was I got a laundry basket and I flipped it upside down. I cut into it a lot, and then I added some padding that I made myself out of like scrap 3D prints and foam, and then I added some PVC pipes for the arms. Okay, so now we're at page 6. Right here, okay, so this is a like mock-up of the like gown that I made. Kind of looks like a dress for like a doll or something, but this was just so I didn't waste any fabric. As you can see, it's kind of like a mermaid like fishtail type deal. Has like the point in the middle, and then this was supposed to come out at the bottom. Again, I made that pattern with the contractor's paper. I use that for a lot of stuff. I can get like a big roll at like Lowe's or Home Depot for like 15 bucks. Works for patterning, works for paper mache. The next part, it looks like it's the like fabric that's all along the top of the pinwheel. Pretty much the whole thing was just like get some approximate measurements, cut it up, sew it together. If it doesn't work, fix it. There wasn't a lot of like premeditation to it. It was just get fabric on here with it looking as somewhat fitted as possible, but not too fitted, because it's like flowy, spooky, Halloweeny. The one thing I did do that what I thought of is the top part, just below where the necklaces are pretty much. There's zippers and buttons under there that connect it to the gown that goes down, and because I can take that part off and I can unzip the gown, I did it so I could wash it, and then also so it's more portable and it's a lot easier to get into. Page 7, as it says, the gown at the beginning I made, it wasn't like long enough, so what I did was I made like a hoop skirt under it, and then there just wasn't enough fabric on top of it to go all around, so I added more fabric to the gown. Like I think I had like 6 yards. Alright, page 8, I think. This was the swords. This is kind of typical like sword stuff where like you get layers of EVA foam, hole in the middle for your PVC pipe, and then I covered it in Warbler, sanded it, added like 11 layers of gesso, and then painted it, sealed it with Mod Podge, like the spray, and I had to do it 6 times. This took a lot of hours. Page, I think 9. I'm not very good at this. This part, I 3D printed the handle so I could grip it like this instead of having to like bend my wrist and hold it like this. The counterweight was added just because like the sword was so heavy with like the heavy lantern on the end that it made it a lot easier to carry. Alright, this top image needs a little explaining. All the swords are removable. They have a mix of like, they have 3D printed parts I made. Some of them are just like scrap pieces I had laying around like and melted together. They go inside the sword and they're glued there. and then there's a hole in them for the wood dowel that's inside them to come out and into the PVC part. And then I drilled holes in the parts where the PVC parts connect, and then I 3D printed like some pins to go inside of them to lock them in place. Alright, I think we're on page 10, the lanterns. So these I made pretty early on. I made a 3D model for these, and then I ended up like reworking on it later. This took a long time to print. I made sure it was really thin though, so it was really light. And then for each of the pieces, I welded them together with my soldering iron and scrap PLA. As you can see on this page, I redid the top part of them so that they could sway. I had to give this 2 coats of paint. So, well, I painted it once and I didn't like the paint job, so I had to sand it and add another paint job. And the second one I liked a lot better. It's like sort of orange, sort of gold. It has like a color shift to it when it spins. I like that because like in the reference images, sometimes the lanterns are like really orange and sometimes they're really like gold yellow. Page I think 11 we're on now. I got fishing line and I had like holes between both the lanterns and the swords. Tied the fishing line in there, made a uni knot. Because of the way they're connected, they can rock on the sword since they're not like completely glued in. And then they have that sway also, so that's what gives them their nice movement as they're like bounced around. I made them light up on the inside. I did the electronic. I soldered all those together. Alright, so we're on the last page. These are the necklaces. The bottom one's made out of foam clay, and then it has a copper wire that's like used for jewelry, like craft jewelry, and that's what's on there. The front piece, like the center one, that's 3D printed with the raised details made out of Mod Podge. Like I just pour Mod Podge, hit hard and like raised. Those like tassels under them, that's just yarn that's been glued together at the top and then painted. The top necklace is 3D printed parts, and then I soldering iron them together. And then both of those are attached to Pinwheel by brooch pins. I like would glue it to the back of them, and then that's everything that's in the binder. So far as the cosplay itself, it was pretty nice to move into. I could run about as fast as you could like, and then I could see pretty well through there. I just had like a narrow field of vision. I could see in between all the 3 masks. So like if you had like the father, the mother, the child, I'm like right here in between all of them. But yeah, I could, as long as I had enough time to like set up in a room, I could go into pretty much any room. It takes like around like 10-ish minutes to put on and get like zippered in and like buttoned up and like have all the lights on and everything. And then I have to deassemble it before I can take it out of a room. So that's Pinwheel. Right now I'm working on Giant Dad. This is the Zweihander. It's still pretty early. I made this file and then I 3D printed it. And then I am waiting on foam to start working on the shield. I have some fabric for the pants, but it's still gonna be a while. It still might be, honestly, like maybe 6 months to a year. I work really slow and I get distracted with side projects, but